Good afternoon. Thank you again for the invitation. Thank you, especially Professor Sarkis, for this opportunity. Bioresorbable scaffolds are now entering in a special area. I would like to say it's like the black tide with the last result of Absorb 2. So I try to be very focused and giving some straightforward points. So these are my conflict of interest. In fact, I founded a startup, ART, which was able to provide the first in man of bioresorbable scaffold and having CE markage and working with Terumo since Absorb 2 results, everything fell down. So this shows a wonderful progress of the last 40 years, but I don't want to go in the plate-bande of Georges, just focusing on the hopeful last development of bioresorbable scaffold, which are in pink. This is a slide from Dr. Virmani showing the things, and in fact we always find the same story: early thrombosis, late thrombosis, very late thrombosis, restenosis. But with scaffold, we should not have at least instant thrombosis. So what is an ideal stent? A bioresorbable scaffold, sorry. A scaffold for the healing phase, and we have to discuss on that. Second, able to dismantle early after healing phase in order to allow positive remodeling. For my standpoint, it is 3 months. Disappearing at least as soon as possible in order to avoid the neoatherosclerosis, thrombosis, and so on. And biocompatible, this is a very important point, because when the scaffold is disappearing, it is associated with inflammation. So this is, again, a slide from Renaud showing the early time of the bioresorbable scaffold, mentioning Igaki Tamai, which was showing a very safe product because there was no thrombosis in his story, but there was no drug on his scaffold. So later on, we can see that there are still many more scaffold involved. The dream is still going on, but this slide is 3 years old. So concept 1, first to degrade. To degrade, okay, but at which speed? And how long scaffolding? Degradation is a physical-chemical process which is a loss of physical property of a chemical structure. Erosion is a gradual loss of a structure, physical breakdown, chemical solution, and or removal and transportation of the material. Resorption, it is material breakdown or assimilation. I take time to define that because we use terms which are not clearly defined. Absorption is permeation of one substance to another, and then corrosion is electrochemical degradation of metal or alloys through environment reaction. And if you could put bio in front of everything, it means a process in vivo and or is mediated by in vivo environment. So this slide, again from Renaud Virmani, shows first the biodegradable coatings on the purple, and then the biodegradable scaffold. And you can see that there is a huge variation in terms of time life, going from 9 months for the first dream, magnesium from Biotronic. We were around less than 24 months, and then Elixir, BVS, and Reva. So bioresorbable scaffold should disappear faster. Why? Because Antonio Colombo said, they are made to scaffold and nothing else. But on which scientific background can we state that? Because every tissue is healing, even bones. When you have a bone fracture after 3 months, the scaffold is over. And Service and Nobuyushi, in fact, show that, in fact, almost 30 years ago, show that after balloon angioplasty, there is no more late loss, which means that in fact the artery has healed. It is over. So this is the healing program from Abbott, which was at the beginning. The support was at 3 months, as you can see. And then we made some change. In fact, the change is that, yes, we agree on the support at 3 months, but we consider that the molecular weight should decrease quite quickly. We should have a lumen loss, but then a lumen gain because the cage is open. And then vascular function recovery. After the first trial of Abbott, they changed completely and they considered that they should increase the time life of the radial force, which means increasing the time life of the whole device, which I think was a mistake. This shows, in fact, that when you speak on degradation with the biopolymer device, you have first the molecular weight, which is decreasing, and then the molecular strength, the strength of the device is decreasing, and then the mass is disappearing. So the concept 2 is overexpansion. This is mandatory for any bioresorbable scaffold. It means that when you have deployed your scaffold or your stent, you should be allowed to overexpand it without break it. This was unfortunately not possible for Abbott. But it is feasible. Others did it. I think there is no comment on that. A device which cannot be overexpanded has no long survival. And Elixir showed self-expanding adjustment, and other devices show that it is possible. I will show you. From Amaranth, for example, you can see that based on the left, on the design of the stent, the angulation, we compare Amaranth with BVS, there are things in the design which can help to overexpand. And if we go on this slide from Amaranth, we can see that they can overexpand by 100% without having any breakage. And then when on the very low right of the slide, you can see that at 34% of overexpansion, you got more than 30% of fractures, which can explain early and late thrombosis. FAST, which was a program of Boston Scientific, which by the way disappeared also after Absorb 2, showed that they were able to have an overexpansion which was, I would say, satisfactory. So concept 3, positive remodeling, what it is. It occurs after scaffold dismantling or cage opening. It was shown after balloon angioplasty that in at least 30% of the cases, excluding diabetes and calcified arteries, the lumen loss will change into a late lumen gain because of the flow. The increase of flow will, the artery will adapt on the permanent increased flow. If too early in the early phase, it can lead to stent arterial recoil. This happened with the Biotronic drain device and also with the first generation of Absorb. If too late after healing phase, it may be limited. So this slide in fact shows on the top Absorb and on the bottom ART device that we did. And you can see on the very bottom that with Absorb, the positive remodeling occurs, but after 18 months because degradation is much longer, and with the ART, it starts at 6 months because, as I told you, we considered that dismantling should occur after 3 months, which did not result in a recoil of the artery. In contrary, it resulted in increased. This is with OCT that you can see at 1 month, 12 months, and 24 months ART-BRS compared to vision stent. So we can see that the vision stent, we understood very well the cage phenomenon described by Patrick Servois, whereas we can see here, as well as here, a positive remodeling. This was in animal, sure, but this is interesting data. And this data I never showed that anywhere. These are the results of the first-in-man of ART, which was a drug-free device because we wanted to start without any drug. So we got restenosis after 1 year. You can see that the diameter is decreasing. But interestingly, at 2 years, we got a late gain, which is a late recovery, which means that the concept of bioresorbable scaffold able to increase the site because of positive modeling is possible. I show you the dissolve, which was in fact showing an increase in the scaffold, but unfortunately, for a reason I don't know, it was not followed by an increase of the lumen. What is neoatherosclerosis or what, but it should have been associated with lumen enlargement. The fourth concept is complete resorption. This is just obvious. Scaffold should totally disappear. It is variable between scaffold. The earlier, the better. And it is related with end of MACE, thrombosis, neoatherosclerosis, and instant restenosis. I disagree about what happened to absorb because I think it is unfair. And the fact that there were more thrombosis was not associated with more death, which is showing that in fact scaffold thrombosis is different from stent thrombosis. If you compare, we did a fast meta-analysis showing that in fact, whereas you have 2 to 4 times more thrombosis with BRS scaffold, it was not at all associated with 2 or 4-fold associated death in the absorb group. In fact, the death was slightly slower in the absorb group. So dissolved biosoluble coronary scaffold show in fact promising data with resorption at 2 years, ability to expand in physiological condition, and they can have open cell body to flex branch side access. Their profile is 150 micrometer. So magnesium, this is an interesting proof that we can improve, and I would say that Biotronic made a lot of effort to show 1, 2, 3, 4 generation devices in order to improve it. The problem of absorb is that DREAM is that they were degrading much too fast. And in fact, they solved it by enveloping their first generation with a polymer coating, which was in order to limit, slow down the degradation, which was too fast. Just one word on biocorrosion and bioresorption. This is something that may be a future, and it shows that in fact it shows a very good scaffolding, avoiding acute recoil. On caging, because at 8 months it degrades. There is a degradation with allow and the process of dismantling. Total corrosion at 1 year. And total bioresorption between around 3 years with tissue recovery. So don't forget the metal. So this shows in fact the absorb, which is in fact still very present at 2 years. And at 4 years, it is the gold ring of Patrick Serrois. But I think it is too late, and this is a lesson. So here we show in fact degradation in 2 models, porcine models and rabbit models, showing that in fact the device should degrade and should not be associated with too much inflammation. This curve shows in fact the degradation of our device in vitro and in vivo with 3 different methods: chemical, histological in pink, and with polarized light. And you can see that in fact at 2 years there is no more device inside. This is what we can call a phantom. So the concept fifth, the thinner the better. We have learned that with castrati, and there are mechanical issues on restenosis and also on thrombosis. It depends on the material, PLA, metal. The form of the strut may interact square or round. This slide from Renaud Vermani in fact shows in fact what happened with the first generation of DES and now the second generation. Maybe the side effect is a fracture stents, and then the bioresorbable polymer coated stent, and then the BVS, the polymer fully absorbable, in which we definitely with this first generation have to make progress, except that those devices will degrade, and if they degrade, it's not such a problem. Dissolve propose a reduced thickness of 120 micrometers. The FAST program was less than 99. I don't believe in that data. I never saw it in reality. And I think it will take a lot of time before we are able to make less than 100 micrometer with a bioresorbable polymer scaffold. Then the metal is interesting. This is nitrated iron covered by polymer and cerulose, And then again, we have less than 90 micrometer. It is easier. And it is, I think, the future. The future generation of Fortitude shows that they are able to do 90 microns. I have some doubts about that, but it seems, at least here, we can see that there is much better coverage of the endothelial tissue. And Biotronic, the DREAMS, which is, as you see, round instead of the BRS, and which may be also something interesting for the thrombosis. And here you see with the Mirage that it looks like a pill. It is round shaped, and we can understand that it might be very good in terms of flow disturbance and then thrombosis, early and late thrombosis. And these slides confirm that by this study that there is here some intense circulation behind the strut of the BVS, whereas we don't see that with this round-shaped Mirage strut. The same with another device which shows exactly the same results. And so go fast to the concept 6, which is vasomotion, endothelial function recovery, decreased MACE, occurs after scaffold dismantling and before complete resorption. Otherwise, you may end up with a scaffold thrombosis. And this has been shown by different devices like the Biosolve 2, the Biotronic device, and also the Absorb. I was just amazed by the result of last year, showing that the Xions had a better vasomotion than the Absorb. And frankly, this is a curious science. I mean, the communication in that was really at least astonishing. So the concept 7, the platform, polymers. You have PLLA, PDLLA, you have metals, magnesium, iron, and this is something we have to take in account. So showing that in fact BVS show cohort A, cohort B. Unfortunately, I would say Absorb did not change its platform after 10 years, and I think this is something which should have been changed earlier in order to reduce the events. The Stanza scaffold is very interesting. It's a composite of structure of PLA-GA fibers plus bioabsorbable elastomer coating. It's very flexible, it's self-expanding design. It has a good radial force. It fully resorbs in 12 to 15 months. I don't know if this program is still alive. Coming from China, it is a microfiber technology, a knitting technology, which will help to make something even a better design for the stent. And here you can see the stent, which is made of knitted devices. The architecture is really interesting, and but no news about this program either. The Biotronic, as I told you, they made a lot of progress. I have no conflict of interest with Biotronic, but Progress MAS, Biosolve 1, Biosolve 2, they decrease the size, the covered size, which is very important. I did not mention that. It is the amount of area which is covered by the stent inside the artery. So the least, the better, in terms of biocompatibility, endothelization, and so on. So you start with a magnesium alloy, refined magnesium alloy, and then they end up with 120 micrometer strut, which is, I would say, quite good. I think this program will carry on. The Biolut is another magnesium program, which has been showing quite interesting results, but again, since last year, no news of this program. I finish with a nitrated pure iron backbone made of metal, fer, forming dispersive mixture of azote and ferrous iron. It precipitates. Its strength is as good as a chrome cobalt alloy. It corroded faster than pure iron, obviously, and there is no toxic element incorporated in. their conclusion is they achieve, but they fail to consistently achieve. They have a problem in the homogeneity of the degradation of the device. Still, it is a very interesting alternative. So I will finish with this slide, future of bioabsorbable scaffold. Is it future of bioabsorbable scaffold related to absorb? I would say, unfortunately, yes, because such a huge amount of data, such a huge amount of communication, and more than 200,000 devices, I would say that yes, the bioabsorbable concept is more or less killed by absorb result, unfortunately. So there is a need to give clear message to the finance deciders, because if a device needs to have 5, 6, 7-year follow-up to show that it will survive, it will be better than a permanent stent, it is too long for the financiers to finance this kind of projects. And unfortunately, the financiers do not know that this time life is not mandatory and we could improve it. So just to show this slide, BioWorld MedTech, who showed clearly that the concept for them is dead, to absorb or not to absorb pixelator, and this is it. So my evaluation on this, absorb results are valid only for absorb. All the message converge towards absorb failure to show non-inferiority. But curiously, after having said that it was the rosy prophecy, it was said that it was the devil. But it did not increase the death. And we should consider that this is a very first generation, and we might have been a little too fast to launch this device for any lesion. So why? The platform did not change during 10 years. Overexpansion is impossible. We know that. So we are linked between underexpand stent or overexpand it and break it, which means in both cases in late thrombosis. So too late means also late thrombosis, because the device will remain in place and the inflammation will not be covered by the drug, which are gone since 3 months after the deployment. Imbalance between too many data with only one first generation device for 11 years. I think this is the point. So I would finish with this slide. If we want to carry on, we should have a scaffold for the healing phase, able to dismantle early after healing phase, starting from 3 months, allowing a shorter complete degradation within 2 years or even better, and biocompatible because the inflammation is necessary for positive remodeling, but 2 years or 3 years after may lead to, unfortunately, neoatherosclerosis and thrombosis. Thank you.